In this lecture, we're going to be looking at the main hotkeys that are used in object mode. These are the hotkeys for grabbing, rotating, and scaling. The hotkey G is used to grab, the hotkey S is used to scale, the hotkey R is used to rotate, hotkeys X, Y, and Z are used to lock to an axis, and hotkeys Shift, X, Y, and Z are used to lock to alternate axes. After that, I'm going to give you a challenge. So let's have a look at how these hotkeys work in Blender. So the first hotkey is to grab an object. So by pressing the letter G, we enter grab mode, and now we can move our object around our scene. I'm going to press escape to cancel. Next we have rotate. To rotate our object, we have to press the hotkey R. So press R to enter rotate mode, and we can now rotate our object. Escape to come out. Thirdly, we have the S key, which is the hotkey to scale. So pressing S and pulling my mouse cursor away from my cube increases the size. Pulling it towards my cube decreases the size. Escape to cancel. So those are the three basic hotkeys. But now let's look at moving, rotating, and scaling to specific axes. We can do this by locking to a specific axis by using the relevant letter on the keyboard. However, we must activate the type of action first, so we cannot press X, Y, or Z before pressing G, S, or R. We must press the action first before locking to the scale. For example, if I wanted to scale along the Z axis, I would have to press S to enter scale mode, and then Z to lock it to the Z axis. And now I can, by moving away, increase the size on the Z axis, and by moving closer, decrease the size on the Z axis. The same applies with any other combination. I can press G to grab and then Y so that it only moves along the Y axis. So no matter where I move my mouse, my object is fixed to moving along the Y axis. For a better idea of what this looks like, let's open the Scene Properties panel by pressing N. Once again, I'm going to grab my object, lock it to the Y axis, and now I can move it across the Y axis without any change in the X or Z values. And the same applies for all axes. Finally, we have the Shift key to use in this concept. By pressing Shift before pressing an axis button, we lock not that button but the other two. I'll show you what this means. So, if I wanted to scale on the X and Y but not the Z, I would press S to enter scale mode, and then I would go Shift Z. You should now see that the green and red lines are in fact the ones that are highlighted. Now when I scale my cube, the values of X and Y increase, but the value of Z does not. This is because I have locked it to the Z axis only. Instead of locking the Z axis itself, it is locked so that the Z axis is now the one which is not manipulated. So, to summarise, we have G for grab, R for rotate, S for scale, X, Y and Z to lock our axes to a single point. So grab, Z, and we can only move in the Z axis. Another example, rotate, R, X to rotate along the X axis. Scale, Y to scale along the Y axis. In addition, we can perform the opposite locking command by pressing Shift. So if I wanted to move my cube without lifting it above or below my plane, I would press G to enter movement and then Shift Z to lock it to the X and Y. And now I can move my cube around the Blender grid without it lifting above or below the grid. And there we go. So it's challenge time, guys. For this challenge, I want you to create a UV sphere. I want you to grab, scale and rotate your sphere using the hotkeys. So experiment with this as much as possible. Get used to using these hotkeys, especially locking them to axes. There aren't too many people who use the Shift XYZ function, so if you can really master that, you really do have a step ahead. So remember, G, S and R are the basic hotkeys for object mode. X, Y and Z to lock to an axis. Shift X, Y and Z to lock to alternate axis. Thanks guys, and I hope to see you in the next lecture.